we need to know and understand the nature of our perplexities in order to determine the tools that we must use. In law, as elsewhere, we can know yet not understand. Shadows often obscure our knowledge, but these shadows cannot be removed by simple means. My name is Paul Konyango, and these words by Professor Herbert Lionel Adolphus Hart will serve as our tether when we descend into the rabbit hole of seeing whether equity or equality is actionable. So what is equity? Equity has been defined as a just and fair allocation of resources to people. There are also definitions that states that equity is derivative of the principles of natural justice. So that what we are saying is that when someone is subjected to any administrative process, then they should expect a fair trial that would not be biased against them and that they have a right to be heard. But also definitions of equity have been noticed to be plenty in number. And plenty, the problem not being just that there are plenty, but also the fact that they are allied to principles of various aspects, whether of law or transitory elements of law. So various scholars, in particular, one with whom I agree with, his name is Olek, in a Fordham Law Review 1951 paper, states that the best way to define equity is not to make it specific, but rather to have it suggestive so that its elements can be malleable to the situations that equity is supposed to address. Equality, on the other hand, is viewed as a state in which every single person has the same rights, the same privileges, the same immunities, and the same duties that is imposed on them by either law or by state. Equity is also defined by Ronald Dworkin, who is also a contemporary of Professor Hart, as a state in which resources are allocated in an envy-free manner. It has a lot of idealism to it. Every great document since time immemorial, or since the Magna Carta itself, since that is the beginning of codifying human rights, to the present moment, either eschews equity or equality, whether it be overtly or covertly, and our own constitution is no exception. From Article 10, Sub-Article 2, Part B, we find equity and equality being mentioned as our national values and principles of good governance. We also find it in Article 27. We also find it in Article 81 as an obligation upon Parliament in its constitution to ensure that there is compliance with what is normally referred to as the two-thirds gender rule. So now we know that our own laws cover for equity and also equality. There is the recent Bbi judgment made by the High Court in which the court refers to the celebrated Indian case of Kesavananda Bharati versus the state of Kerala. And in this case, the court basically upheld the fact, a very pertinent view of our constitution, that it is not just a political document, but it is also a social document. A social document that embodies the social philosophy of a people. You remember I mentioned at the beginning of this talk on the perplexities and determining the character of these perplexities. We understand as a society that we have an issue of inequality. That is a perplexity. Its character is not just as confined by legality, but it also enters into the sphere of social philosophy. And in order to delve deeper and understand the place of equality and subsequently equity, we need to understand what it means, not just from a legal point of view, for the law, as we lawyers tend to say, is clear, but we also have to understand its social inclinations. Law influences and shapes society as much as society influences and shapes law. So looking at law, at legal concepts from this perspective sheds a lot of light on how we could, as a society, implement them. Now, in as far as perplexities goes, the first of which that is very pertinent to this question of equality is its paradoxical nature. Ronald Dworkin states that equality can, in and of its own, bring about inequality. So that when we apply principles of equality to a particular group of people, then we could inadvertently create inequality. I'll give an example. Say we were to invite people to apply for a job and state that all men and women can apply. From that perspective, we have achieved sort of gender equality. So all the men and women come to apply. But say the job is on, let's say, a data entry position. Then we will create inequality since every single man and woman who does not have the requisite skills to perform data entry becomes unequal to the ones who can. So that is its paradoxical nature. Now, when many people speak about equality, what they are trying to communicate is an absolute state in which equality exists. There is a socio-anthropological term called egalitarianism, and this is a term that signifies this state in which equity exists in its absolute nature. So an egalitarian state is a state in which every single individual in society is equal. The social anthropologists as well have tried to determine whether we have egalitarian states amongst us. These are the hunter-gatherer groupings of Australia. And also they make reference to we as Africans before we were colonized, some communities practice egalitarianism. But then also egalitarianism is an ideal, an aspiration, same as equality. It cannot be fully realized because it has a lot of constraints. So at this particular point in time, we find that a great perplexity of equality is the fact that it cannot be implemented fully, a theoretical concept that is defied by our practical sense. The next perplexity is the fact that equality is a singular concept aimed to solve the problems of a multifaceted society. So take, for example, our country, Kenya. We are a country of over 45 tribes, over 40 million people. So say we were to take egalitarianism, which is the best way in which equality exists in full, and try to apply it here. It would mean then that, say, the 2 million people in Nyanza decide that Kisumu is a capital city, whereas the 3 million people in Central decide that Thika is a capital city. It is not sustainable on such a wide scale. And that is the problem of looking at equality in such a lens, as a singular concept for a multifaceted society. So now that we have determined the perplexities that we face, what more? Is there an answer to it all? Professor Hart mentions that legal notions, however fundamental or complex, can best be elucidated by ensuring that the methods we use are best attuned to their special character. We found that the special character of equality as a concept is the fact that it is very singular in nature. 2, it is a theoretical concept that defies being applied in a realistic sense. And to this answer, I think equity is our panacea. Equity stands as our solution for everything. And to demonstrate this, I will pose to you a question asked by the great Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. What is it that you want? Equality of opportunity or equality of outcome? Equality of outcome means then that if, let's say, an individual were to start selling mangoes today and they became a millionaire, then the state is given the burden of ensuring that every single person who sells mangoes becomes a millionaire. You don't need rocket science to realize that that is really impossible. Equality of opportunity, on the other hand, means that the state, through its own initiative, should ensure that commerce is viable within its jurisdiction, to ensure commerce through its policies, through infrastructure, so that every single individual has an opportunity to enter into commerce. Professor James Roma, in his book Equality of Opportunity, states that there is a very pertinent view on equality of opportunity, and this is the principle of non-discrimination. So that when persons in society are applying for competitive positions, what they will be judged on is the skills they require to perform what is required in these positions. So that now what we are saying is, for the men and women who are applying for the data entry position, we will judge them simply on how good they can perform those duties and if they have the skills. not on questions of sex, not on questions of race, not even on questions of political affiliation. And I think, in my view, this best eschews equity. We mostly as a society refer to equality as a cure for our problems, yet what we actually need is equity. The law is very clear on the position of equality. Our own constitution under Article 27, Sub-Article 3, provides that men and women are to be treated equal. And then it goes on to state that they are to be accorded equal opportunities in economic, social, and political spheres. So you notice even the law in its specificities boils down to equality of opportunity. But equality as a general term is subject to the criticisms and the failures that social philosophy levies upon it vis-a-vis the practical sense in which it's supposed to exist. And so that is why I maintain that perhaps what you actually need is an equitable society and not an equal society. I have long found in the years that I have consciously walked this earth that the greatest liberation struggle of our time is that of the mind. And I've also found that the mind consciously arrives at the keys to its liberation when it does so of its own volition. So consider these words today as my incentive to you that you might find your keys. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for lending me your ear.